borrow mine?
And we're coming back to me and saying, hey, you
Not sure that would help.
One receipt. Your receipt. Can you email it? Can you email a receipt? It doesn't say what for.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Already.
I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the afternoon session of a special board meeting for the Goochland County Board of Supervisors at 3 p.m. on November 26th, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone here and listening at home. We will begin our meeting as usual with an invocation that will be led by Supervisor LaScalette, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Alvarez. If you'll all please stand as you're able.
Thank you. Just on. Okay. Father God, thank you for enabling us to gather here today. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve this great county. Now as we go about doing the business set forth today, help us to keep you first in everything that we say and do. Bless all of us with the proper knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so that we all may prosper. Most of all, bind us together in a spirit of love which surpasses all things. It is in your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is County Administrator comments. Mr. Badesky, do you have any comments today for the board?
Mr. Chairman, no formal comments today. I did want to recognize today we have in the audience some folks that were really key. As we had shared at the last board meeting that we were recognized by Moody's with our AAA recognition, and I did want to just thank our finance staff. Debbie's here from the schools, our constitutional officers. They certainly all are part of that team with us, and thank them for all of their efforts. We will continue to keep up that high bar. You're going to be hearing from our auditor today that continues to demonstrate our commitment to financial transparency and financial excellence. So last thing, just a reminder, December 7th is our tree lighting here in the county. It's always a great event, and encourage folks to come out and participate in that activity.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, again, congratulations and thank you to everybody involved with that credit rating. That was quite a heavy lift, and we do appreciate everybody's efforts. It was a team effort. The next item on the agenda is new business consent items. We've got 4 items on the consent agenda for today. Mr. Badesky, if you wouldn't mind just giving us an overview of each of those 4 items before we consider them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief summary for each of them. I will let you know that your diligent Finance and Audit Committee met this afternoon at 1:30. They reviewed the items under your consent here and come to you with a favorable recommendation for your consideration here today. Also, there are a number of items that relate to the schools on your consent here today. Ms. White's here if you have any specific questions to address any of those items. The very first item is a non-schools item. It's the clerk of the courts. asking for an additional appropriation of $10,000 for training and other educational costs. You may be aware that the clerk's office does have authority and does collect a fee for paper filings within its office. Under the code, it allows for these funds to be transferred for her operating expenses. That comes to you with a recommendation for consideration of approval there. The second item that you have on your consent agenda is a school board related item. They're asking for an increase of their operating fund of $352,010 and the cafeteria fund by $2,500 and the school federal grant fund by $7,669. You have attachments in your package for each of the ones that we're going to go through here. The only impact to the county transfer will be the appropriation of turnback funds in the amount of $97,157. The next item that you have for your consideration today under consent is a request to increase the school operating funds by $66,937, the cafeteria fund by $6,000, and the school federal grant fund by $10,000. There's no additional local funding impact as it relates to the county transfer under this particular request. And the final request that you have today is for the school's capital improvement program. The board is requested to amend the FY19 school capital improvement program by transferring $89,000 from the Oilville Garage project that has been stagnant on their side, and $40,000 from the Randolph Elementary School roof upgrade project to unexpected plumbing improvements and HVAC at the Goochland High School. We had reviewed that in the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. The Randolph Elementary School project is complete and those funds are no longer necessary, and they do not plan to utilize the 89 on the Oilville Garage project, thus transferring here as well. Mr. Chairman, I or staff are available to answer any additional questions you may have regarding the 4 consent items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Badesky. Just to confirm or reiterate, none of these items would result in an increase in local funds, the budgets? Is that correct?
That's fundamentally correct. It's just the turnback funds from prior year would be added to current year.
Would be added to current year. Okay, so that would be the appropriation of the 97 and change from prior year. Okay, are there questions for either Mr. Badesky or staff on any of the consent items?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve consent items 6A, B, C, and D as presented.
Okay, it's been moved to approve the consent items as a block or as a group. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded and maybe thirded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, ayes have it. It's unanimously approved. Thank you very much for that item. Next item on the agenda is the new business. First item under new business is a presentation of our fiscal year 2018 comprehensive annual financial report by our county's external auditors, PB Mares. We have with us today, we're pleased to have with us today, Mr. Mike Garber from PB Mares. Would you like to walk us through the 2018 CAFR?
Sure, we'll go page by page.
line by line, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I will not walk you through the CAFR, but as you've previously mentioned, we did meet at 1:30 with the Finance and Audit Committee and went through the financial statements and congratulated you there, and I'll do it again on your upgrade with Moody's to AAA. And I think there's always, as you said, it's a team effort. There's a long list of things that they go through, and one of those obviously is your audit and those audit results. And I know that they're always very interested in looking at those items, management letters and things like that we issue. So it is important that not only do we present this, but that we go through these things in detail, or at least go over those things I think that we need to hear. I know that most of you have already heard this, so I will try to be brief. We did issue clean opinions this year on the financial statements, unmodified opinions on the financial statements, as well as internal control and compliance. And then the third opinion was also unmodified on your federal dollars as far as compliance with how we spend those. I think it's very important to point out that that's the second year now in a row that we've had no findings, no deficiencies or material weaknesses in any of the internal controls. So that means next year that we get to move into the low-risk category when we're looking at your federal dollars. We've been in that high-risk category now for a while, but now we've had 2 years in a row. We get to move into low risk. So again, a positive step for the finance department, social services, the school board, all those who deal with those federal dollars to make sure we're spending them correctly. So kudos to everyone there. We did have a management letter. It had one small item for suggestion, as well as obviously the new upcoming GASB pronouncements, so we can start preparing for those. Also met with the Finance and Audit Committee and talked about if there were any issues in the audit while we were here, if we had any journal entries, audit entries, things of that nature. There were none. So not only an entity of this size that we could come in and issue clean opinions, we did not even have a journal entry, and we look hard, but we didn't have anything. And lastly, we did implement successfully the new GASB standard this year, 75, that deals with the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits. So we have that liability, or those liabilities, I should say, from different plans, reflected now in our financial statements as well, and discussed in great detail into the footnotes of the financial statements. With that, I don't have much else prepared to go through with the board, since we did do a detailed presentation earlier, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And if you do have some places in the financial statements that you do want me to go over with you, I'm happy to do that as well. I know you just received them, so you probably really haven't had a chance to go through it in as much detail as I know you will. And I'll open it up to everyone that if you do have questions later on, I'm more than happy to come back and answer them, or we can exchange phone calls, emails, or however you may want to answer those, have me answer those questions. So with that, that's all I have, sir.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Garber. Just to reiterate, I guess there are no findings in this audit?
No, sir.
And we'll be able to submit our financials on time to the state?
We will. Everything will be in by November 30th, and will be submitted on time.
Fantastic. Questions for Mr. Garber? I just want to thank you very much for all of your efforts. This is a cooperative effort between the county and our auditors to make sure that we are good stewards of our taxpayer dollars and our county's financial situation. So thank you for your help with that. With that, there's no other questions. Just thank you for coming out today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. All right. Board, there's no motion or no action to be taken on that, CAFR. It's just an information presentation. The next item on the agenda is Ms. Horlacher is going to walk us through the general fund FY 2018 year-end results and consider approval for uses of general fund balance. Ms. Horlacher?
We're finally going to wrap up FY 18. I'm Barbara Horlacher, Director of Financial Services. Mr. Garber presented the audit, and I'm going to present the numbers. Final numbers for FY 18. We had revenues of $55.6 million, which was $5 million above our budget. Expenditures of $50.3 million, which was a savings of about $1.5 million. So we ended up with an operating surplus of about $5.3 million. After transfers out to the CIP, we ended up with an increase in our overall fund balance of $1.8 million. So we ended the year with a fund balance of about $36.2 million. And that was broken up, of course, into the GASB required categories. And the ones we tend to look at the most are the unassigned and the revenue stabilization. The revenue stabilization is at $1.8 million, which is 3% of our total annual adopted general fund budget, which is our policy also, so we are exactly at our policy on that one. Our unassigned fund balance is about $18.4 million, which is about 30.4% of our subsequent year budget. And for that one, we have a target of 25%, but we've also set a minimum of 20%. So again, we are well above our both our minimum and our target in our unassigned fund balance. we had an overall increase of $210,000 in our unassigned fund balance plus our revenue stabilization. In your packets, there's a list of fund balance assignments. Those are exactly the same that you approved in September of this year, with the exception of the bottom two items under assigned. Those numbers have changed a little, and then we're also asking you at this time to appropriate those two numbers. The schools, hopefully you'll approve appropriating the 97,157 since you already told them they can spend it in an earlier agenda item. And then we have approval of a $7,843 in excess funds from our lease, which we're going to give to the IT department to continue their replacement cycle for MDTs for public safety. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I would ask you to approve those two appropriations of the use of fund balance.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Board, we have questions for Ms. Horlacher on either the year-end financials or the appropriations that have been proposed.
Just a quick general question.
Sure, John.
So committed, I was looking earlier, months ago, I was looking at the financial management policies, and I see the definition of committed. But for our purposes, I can equate committed funds with revenue stabilization.
Correct, correct. And that's really a requirement of the GASB. They make us classify it that way.
Got it, okay, because I'm trying to discern the difference between committed and assigned.
Right. Committed means, assigned is more flexible, although it's assigned to a project. They know that at any point you can reassign it. Committed takes a formal action of the board to say, you know, we want to use the funds in this committed balance, and then we've set that policy of how and when we can use the revenue stabilization fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. We will need to move to approve those general fund balance uses. Page 19 of the packet.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the assignment of the general fund balance as presented by Ms. Horlacher, and it's in our packet.
And the appropriations as presented.
Yep.
Okay. All right, it's been moved to approve as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous. That is approved. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Horlacher.
All right, thank you.
And we're on to the next item. I think you're still up. This is the first quarter projection.
Okay, I'll go right into that. We reviewed these first quarter projections at the earlier Finance and Audit Committee meeting. These are the projections as of September 30th, so that's only 3 months into FY19. They're conservative projections because we are so earlier in the year. And just to illustrate that, the FY19 revenues are projected to be $55.6 million, which were our actual results in FY18. So very good likelihood that we would end up with higher revenues at the end of FY19. Expenditures are projected to be about $1 million under budget, which would give us a positive operating result of about $3 million. If we end up with that positive result of $3.3 million and then transfer approximately $7.5 million to CIP projects, the change in fund balance would be a decrease of approximately $4 million. Were we actually to end the year that way, we would keep our unassigned fund balance at the same dollar amount. We would increase our revenue stabilization because our policy requires that. We always adjust that each year. We would end with we would end well within our policies, but with an unassigned fund balance of 29.1%. Our target is 25%. Our minimum is 20%. Of course, our revenue stabilization would have been adjusted, so we would end up at 3%, which our policy requires. And our debt service expenditures will probably still end at about 6.93%, which is well within our policy of 10%. There are no, I don't need a motion for anything, but I will take any questions that you have on the first quarter projections.
Okay, it's still a little early in the year, just the first quarter projection. But again, our conservative approach to budgeting seems to be on track here, and that we're running slightly better than budget. So, questions for Ms. Horlacher?
Quick question.
Yes, sir, John.
Like on the revenues, the 2.106046,
Mm-hmm.
that's just, that's based on the pace we're at the end of the first quarter.
Correct.
You don't make any adjustments for any anticipated timing of things? Known timing?
It's kind of looking back. What I do is I look back at, since FY18 is now finished, which we didn't have that advantage when we set the budget, but now that it's finished, I can kind of say, well, most of these revenues are growing or they're staying flat, and sort of, it's basically like trend analysis of what happened in 18.
That's how you arrive at the 2.1?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the 2.1 would be the amount we would be over the budget.
Yeah.
Based on your...
Based on my current projection, right.
And so that projection is based on historical, in addition to where we are in the
Correct.
quarter.
It's a little hard to say with
quarter.
things like, property taxes, because we don't even make our first collection till
Right.
December. So then once we have half a year, I can say, okay, we probably can double this. And
Right.
so, but it's a combination of.
Is it just like a formula that you plug into something or?
Well,
Part of the formula is up here, and
I think, John, one of the things that she had mentioned was that with the full benefit of the known run rate in June of 18 as a base to build from, which we did not have in the January, February, March budget cycle last year.
Okay.
We have 6 more months worth of run rate refreshed data, and that's where a lot of that $2 million comes from, is that our current run rate versus the run rate a year ago. So.
right, exactly.
Is that, correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, because now I've got all of 18,
Right.
documented, so I can just kind of say, oh, that came in higher than we thought, so,
Gotcha.
that
Okay,
kind of thing.
I understand. Thank you.
And if history is any guide, that $2 million may come in conservative as well. It's just, that's the way we budget, very conservatively. What the auditor said, the appropriate level of conservatism, so.
There you go.
good.
I like the term.
Yeah, there you go.
And then when I first glanced at it, I could see that the 55,600 minus 2.10 didn't exactly come out, but I think you just rounded the year-end projection number, which
Right.
I makes sense. It was pretty close, but I got it. I understand. It's art, not
You're
science.
an attorney, not a CPA, right? You're doing pretty well. You're doing well. Yeah. Good job. Keep us honest. Good. John, do you have any other
No, thank
questions
you.
for Barbara? Or,
Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments on the first quarter results?
Just thank you.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
You're
And that was information only, so there's no motion required there. Thank you for that. Is there any other information or items to come before this august group? No other items to come before us today, then I will go ahead and adjourn the Board of Supervisors meeting as follows. We will adjourn till Tuesday, December 4th. I guess from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. the board's invited to an open house tour of the new assessor's office. Following that, on Tuesday, December 4th at 3 p.m. for our regular business meeting and 7 p.m. for public hearings. There's nothing else to come before us. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned.